Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another version of Journeys with Jack. I have a great subject today. This is Saint Bartholomew, the French Caribbean island better known as Saint Barths. I had the pleasure of going there a little while back with my family. Let me tell you about it. Here's what we did. We got on a plane in Atlanta with Delta Airlines, flew about 4+ hours to St. Martin, which is kind of the gateway to St. Bart's. St. Martin's an interesting island in that part of it is French, part of it is Dutch. They seem to get along pretty well. Anyway, we got there and then got our baggage and went over to the prop plane. Yes, that's right, propeller plane. Win Air, Winair. Very small plane. We got on it with, I guess, 4 of us from my family, 2 college students, and what appeared to be 2 well-heeled American vacationers. The plane took off, and we had a very short flight, maybe 20 minutes or so, over to nearby St. Bart's. Well, we had an adventure because you come into the runway, which is actually downhill. Yeah, that's right. It's not level. It goes from a ridge down to the beach. I was amazed at the skill of the pilot. Brilliant. The guy came in, he seemed to tilt the plane upwards, revved up the engines, and then it was kind of like maybe he had them stall or something, and he just stuck it. I mean, right on that runway, which is a very short runway, only about 2,100 feet. Before we knew it, we were landed. We were inside the airport reading the infographic about the namesake, Remy de Hananen. Please forgive me if I mispronounced his name. Brilliant fella. He was very visionary. He was a pilot in the Caribbean, came along, saw St. Bart's, figured he could land a plane there, and did so. And then later, he bought this great rock outcropping in the bay, St. John's Bay, near where the airport is, and developed the Eden Rock Hotel, which was very popular starting in the 1950s with the celebrities from Hollywood, millionaires, billionaires, etc., and remains so to this day. Fabulous place. I'll get around to it a little bit later in the discussion today. So, in no time flat, we'd collected our bags and gotten over to the rental car place. There's tons of them right there at the airport. It's very well designed, very efficient. And we got in a Mini Cooper and drove off to our hotel, Les Îles de la Plage. Now, the airport is right there in Saint-Jean, and then we went over to St. John's Bay to our hotel. There's 2 principal hotels on that bay, Les Îles de la Plage and Eden Rock. Basically, one's on one side of the airport, one's on the other. At Les Îles de la Plage, there are 12 different villas. Ours had 3 bedroom, 2 bath, air conditioning only in the bedrooms. It had a great open floor plan with a living room, kitchen, etc., a little courtyard outside, off-street parking, close by swimming pool. The staff was great. Mulaney, who functioned as kind of the concierge and hotel manager, really helped us out a lot and gave us good advice about what to see and where to go. And later on, she actually was seen by us at the restaurant she'd recommended that we utilize when her brother was playing in a jazz band there one night. Another perk with Les Îles de la Plage, perhaps you could call it a lagniappe, which is the French word for a little something extra, is they have books, magazines, movies, and games that you can check out at the office and play in the evening if you so wish. Well, after getting the lay of the land from the lady and asking her a lot about different beaches, writing down the information on the little map I was given by the rental car company, we decided to take a minute and lounge by the pool and then get ready and go into town for dinner. So we drove into Gustavia and had dinner at a lovely little bistro called Eddie's. We had some time to go shopping as it wasn't quite dark. We walked around the promenade and checked out all the various and sundry shops. Now, St. Bart's is awesome. There are all kinds of luxury shops there. Everything from Rolex to Gucci to Dolce, things I'd never heard of, Prada, etc. My wife and daughter loved it, so it was fantastic for them. Now, for me, yes, I like a bit of shopping, but I was also really fascinated with the food. There's a great supermarket close to Les Îles de Plage, close to Eden Rock, called Marche U. At Marche U, they had camembert, they had brie, they had cheeses I'd never heard of, they had all manner of wines, they had pâté. All of this very reasonably priced, just in from France. So you see, St. Barths is a French overseas département, and as such, there is no customs duty or tax on that which comes in. It's basically part of France. So these things that I was used to paying a lot more for in the States, you got at a great deal right there in St. Barths. Plus, they utilized the euro, which at the time was about 1.10 to $1, so very close to 1-to-1, easy conversion rate. Getting back to Gustavia. So we went shopping, and here's what I got. Yes, I succumbed to peer pressure, or maybe impulse buying, as I walked right by a store called MC2 St. Barths and bought this super cool swimsuit, which I thought was so quintessentially European, maybe a little bit more Italian than French with the Vespas on it, but still super duper cool. Now later on in life, I was in Romania, and what did I see in the airport in Bucharest but a store for this very same brand? Amazing. Already having one, I didn't need to purchase a new one in Bucharest, however. All right, so moving on. We had a great dinner that night, came back, watched a movie that we'd gotten from Mulaney with Tom Cruise. It was fun. Then the next day, we got up and I was awakened, actually, by the most delightful scene. It was the local baker bringing bread to each one of the villas. That's right, fresh bread in the morning, part of the deal at the hotel. How quintessentially French. So we ate our croissants and baguettes with some of the camembert that I'd purchased at the Marche U the day before, along with orange juice, and then we set out to go visit some of the beaches that Melania told us about. The first one we went to was called Anse de Salines. We drove a bit and then crossed over a dried up salt pond, perhaps that was the origin of the name, and then scampered over a sand dune and down to this lovely light brown colored sand beach, perhaps the color of the jacket I'm wearing today, and then the water was crystal clear. It was great. I really did enjoy it, but there was one little thing that I probably should have gotten to know a bit better from Mulaney before I took my 12-year-old son there. It was a nude beach. So subsequently went over to La Plage de Gouverneur, where everyone was clad in a stylish swimsuit, and we had the good time swimming at that beach for a while before we came back and tried out the new restaurant Melania had told us called Le Diamant. Le Diamant is very close by in Saint-Jean. It's actually just outside the village near the soccer stadium. It was excellent. She had told us to go there, that was where the locals ate, and she indeed herself would eat there from time to time. We found it charming. I had the most delicious ratatouille. I liked it so much I had it again later on in the trip. There was also fresh seafood, etc. It was delicious. And they were so friendly there. I really did enjoy that aspect of it. They were a little bit interested that here we were American tourists coming to what was essentially the locals' restaurant, and they asked me how I'd found out, and I told them that the lady at Les Îles de la Plage had told me, and I was so glad she'd shared it with us. It was delicious. So back home we went to bed, got up the next day. I was awake a little bit before everyone else, so I decided I would go for a jog on the beach, and I walked down to the nearby cove and ran across from Les Îles de la Plage towards Eden Rock. I had to cross over the roped-off area at the end of the runway. So for safety, right there at the beach, there's a rope that tells you not to go into this area, so I had to kind of portage around that and then run along the beach, and then I decided I'd go for a swim. I swam out to a platform, maybe, 200 yards offshore towards Eden Rock, climbed up and lay on the floating dock-type platform. As I peered through the cracks, there was a 4-foot-long barracuda underneath. So just as a word of caution, when you're in the Caribbean and other places that hold barracuda, make sure you're not wearing any kind of jewelry or shiny objects. Those tend to attract the barracuda, and you really don't want to make their acquaintance. So subsequently, I dove off the platform, trying to dive a good ways away, swam back to shore, and walked up to what's called Nicky Beach and the area around the Eden Rock and spoke to the staff. The Eden Rock staff were clad in brilliant red, about the color of my tie here, and incidentally, same color red that I noticed on Play Airlines, the airline to Iceland. So they're in a great uniform, this brilliant red. Everything about the Eden Rock seems to use that color scheme, and it was set off nicely with a white belt. So I asked them if I could come over and eat breakfast there, even though we were staying at a different hotel. They were most welcoming and allowed us to do so, and it was a fabulous breakfast. In fact, it was so good we went back every day subsequently. So we came back to breakfast after I'd collected the family, and then leaving the Eden Rock, we went to check out a place I'd heard about called the Washing Machine. We drove down to the Toyney neighborhood area and then passed through that to Grand Fawn. And I was able to speak with a local farming family and ask for permission to park at the side of their farm from a nice lady named Clementine. We spoke entirely in French, and I really found it very interesting. They had a farm where they were growing a small plot of vegetables, had a cow or two, some goats, and some chickens. It struck me as what is called in England a small holding, where it was a small independent farm. And I'd read that a lot of Norman French had come and settled in St. Barths, and it was not really a plantation island which grew sugar or other crops, but was composed predominantly of small hold farms, which this seemed to be very traditional. I found it fascinating. We were going to set off to go to the washing machine, all four of us, when my daughter and my wife balked at the idea of hiking over a small mountain to go see these tidal pools. So they stayed by the local beach, and my son Sam and I set off on what turned out to be a pretty arduous trek over and above a mountain with potential for sliding down a lot. So we got down, checked out the tidal pools, which were interesting. The tide rushes in and kind of bursts forth, not quite like a blowhole, but shoots up in the air, hence the name, the washing machine. We came back, collected the girls, and went over to La Plage de Gouverneur, where we'd been yesterday and which was rapidly becoming one of my favorite beaches. I can't recommend going to the washing machine unless you're just very adventuresome. It's a bit of a hike, and as I said, the rest of the family didn't want to do it. Anyhow, getting back, we showered after the beach, went into Gustavia again, and went along the promenade. So the promenade goes along beside the harbor. You look out at the various boats docked there, and there's shopping along the promenade. And then in most European fashion, there is some open-air dining. We availed ourselves of such at a restaurant called La Repaire, where we had mussels with cream sauce. It was delicious. As I looked up at the hills, I noticed a sight that made me think about Monaco. There were so many whitewashed buildings, narrow streets, and red roofs. It looked a lot like Monaco, except for the red roofs were made of tin and not tile, but pretty close similarity. So subsequently, we came on back, went to bed, got up the next morning, went to Eden Rock, and we decided, what are we going to do today? Which beach? Well, we had heard of a great beach at Colombier, which also had a little bit of a hike, but we were undaunted, particularly my wife and daughter, since they'd not done it the day before. So we drove down to a place called Flamands and then got directions to where to park and take the hike over the hill. So glad we did. This became the new favorite beach. Colombier is in a secluded cove. Very few people go there because you do have to make about a 20-minute hike over a significant hill. We walked around a whole bunch of goats and saw some tortoises and other wildlife. This is an area of a secluded cove reached by boat or by a hike, and on one end of it was where David Rockefeller had built a house that was later purchased, we heard, by Harrison Ford. So we swam and swam, and I had made some sandwiches that morning, my version of a croque monsieur, with some cheese and some of the ham we got at the grocery store, utilizing the baguettes and croissants brought to us each morning. We ate a great lunch there on the beach, and then time came to head on home, and I'd noticed some people coming in from a different path, so I thought it might lead to the same area, maybe a little bit less arduous as it had steps. Well, boy, was I wrong. We climbed up these steps and wound up in quite a different area, in fact, about 2 miles away. We wound up at the Colombier viewpoint. I was thinking at this time how stupid I was and what to do, and so I set the family down in a shady area, and I went looking nearby at a construction site, and thankfully ran into a nice fellow from Guadeloupe, a gentleman named Thierry. So this was a case where being able to speak French came in very handy, just as it did when I was at the farm in Grand Foin where we parked. So fortunately, my rudimentary French helped out, and Thierry was kind enough to drive us back to where we parked our car about 2 miles away. We went up and down some very steep hills and roads. Thankfully, he had space in the cab for my wife, while I rode in the back with the kids and all the various and sundry construction tools. Thank goodness, though, for Thierry. So we got back and took a well-deserved rest at the hotel, sitting by the pool for a few minutes before we went out to Le Diamant restaurant. I did very French things while sitting at the pool. I ate cheese, fromage in French, had some camembert, some wine, wrote in the journal, relaxed. It was great. So, another delicious meal of ratatouille at Le Diamant and off to bed. The next day, we got up and it was very windy. We were sitting at the Eden Rock trying to figure out where to go and had our map out in front of us and tried to pick places that we thought might be in coves and were sheltered. We went and tried Le Flamand Beach. We tried the Petit Cul-de-Sac. We tried the Le Petit Anse. Anse, incidentally, means cove in French. None of those seemed to work. They're all quite windy, so we decided to drive into Gustavia. Somewhere along the way, we went up to the top of the hill, and my son and I climbed up by the lighthouse for a great view over the town and out to sea. Then we decided to try one last beach on the edge of town called La Grande Galette. We drove down towards it, had to park a bit of a ways away near a small grammar school, and then walked over to it. Well, this beach was the ticket. It was in between two large cliffs or headlands which blocked the wind. It was calm. It had excellent snorkeling. I saw giant tang fish, beautiful other fish, sergeant majors, etc. And there were some cafes nearby where we could eat and get a drink if necessary. We made an afternoon of it, then came on back to Les Allées de la Plage, got ready for dinner, and went the last night to Le Diamant and had a sumptuous dinner. And we were rewarded with a jazz band playing. They were quite good. We enjoyed it. It was good fun, and we played cards as we waited for the dinner. All in all, it was a great evening. Back home to bed, and I got up early the next morning and crossed over from the villa straight past the office and went down a set of steps into the water near the seawall and swam around in this translucent green water, the same shade as a pair of sunglasses my dad had in the 70s. So swimming around a bit, I climbed out at the beach, walked back to our room and collected everyone, and away we went to turn in the rental car, take the interesting prop flight back, and then get on Delta back to Atlanta. Fabulous trip. We did about 4 or 5 days altogether there in beautiful St. Barths. I hope that this podcast is helpful to you. Please follow us on the web, on YouTube. Check out the photos on Instagram. And a couple of final words. Marsh U had a great recycling program where we took all of our old water bottles and stuck them into some kind of grinder that ground up the plastic, and then you throw the caps in a bin and you get a credit at the store. My son and I would do that while my wife and daughter were shopping for provisions. Another great thing I mentioned already was you could get such wide variety of French food at Marsh U at such reasonable prices. Another good thing to do is make sure you get a small car like the Mini Cooper. The roads are narrow and the parking's a little bit tight. That car worked great, and also opt for the convertible. It's not that hot in St. Barths, I think, not like some of the other Caribbean islands, because it's small. It gets a good sea breeze, and then you're up and down a lot with higher elevation, etc. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope it was helpful. Look forward to seeing you on the next Journeys with Jack. Bye-bye.